And we're live. Welcome, everybody, to another Homestead from Scratch Sunday night conversation with Logan and John Tejan. Logan can't join us tonight, but John, what's up, man? How's it been going?
Oh, everything's doing well. Can't complain. I said I'd never complain because of the rain, but I'm getting really close to it. It's it's like every time you go outside, everything's soaking wet. You can't get any. I mean, or it's raining and you can't get out there and do something. And when you do, everything's a mess. The grass is, in my yard needed to be mowed, and it's like, everywhere you go, you're just covered. It's the pastures just, it's knee high, but it's like the grass never dries out. So when you go out there, you just like soaking wet. So it's I'm ready for it to dry out a little bit. I don't need a drought like the last 2 years, but I mean, I was looking at the rainfall amounts so far this year, and we're just now the halfway point, I guess, almost exactly of the year.
Yeah.
We've had I forgot we've had almost we've had over 30 inches of rain so far this year. The yearly average is less than 50. It's about 49. So like we're way ahead of annual rainfall. Now we do get rain mainly in the first part of the year, not so much in the second half of the year, but we're way ahead. We're eight year to date, we're about 8 inches above average rainfall right now, which is a lot of rain. Since the last 2 years, we were probably 8 inches below, the average. So, um, anyway, it's. I'm not going to complain, but I'm getting close. It needs to dry out a little bit. I mean, everything is soaking wet all the time, and thank goodness I have a good pair of rubber boots when I go out, and But
John, your video is froze for some reason. I'm still getting your audio, but
oh, okay. I don't know why. Huh. Interesting.
maybe
Mine's
yours
working,
froze.
but hopefully I'll unfreeze here in a second.
Oh,
Not exactly.
there you go. You're
Okay.
coming through like a potato, though. So,
Let me check and see what the internet speeds are running. I should have enough bandwidth, so hopefully it'll catch up to itself. But other than that, as I said earlier, when we were talking before the show, I'm planning on maybe taking a vacation next year. And maybe that's
yeah, you
something.
said it's the first vacation you've had in a little while.
Probably 10 years, close to 10
Wow,
years. And the last one was taking kids to Disney World, so I don't really consider that a vacation for
that
me.
wasn't really for you. Yeah,
No, it was not I mean, I enjoyed myself, but, come on, it's,
you're not gonna join the Disney adult bandwagon, John.
oh man, I don't understand that, but, to each his own, I'm sure I do some weird stuff, but there's people that like, they're 40, 50 years old and they just love going to Disney World. And I'm like, number one, I don't like people that much. And I sure don't like a lot of people.
Yeah,
Crowds just really hack me off. But there's some things about taking a vacation when you have a homestead. You just can't up and leave.
yeah,
I have cows, I have 4 dogs, 4 cats, I got chickens, I have ducks, I have donkeys. It's not like you can go, well, we're just going to plan a vacation like everybody else does, right? And maybe take the family chihuahua to the dog kennel for a couple weeks. They'll be fine. You go off and have a good time. When
yeah.
you're leaving this much stuff behind, you've got to have somebody that's going to take care of those animals. You
And
just
they
can't.
gotta know your whole process of what
Yeah,
you're
and
doing
you got to
every day.
train them and make sure that they know what's going on, because it's just you can't, because and I can see this happening to me, but maybe there'll be enough wine in Italy that it won't matter. Um, where you're going, I'm worried about what's happening on the farm. I'm gone. Is everything going to be okay? And you end up not enjoying yourself because you're concerned about what's going on at home.
Yeah.
So it's a challenge, but on the other hand, I don't take a lot of vacations because there's a quote. I forget who actually is the original person that quote this, is that you should go about creating a life where you don't want to take a vacation, right? You
Yeah.
don't want to be that 9 to 5 grunt who just lives from vacation to vacation, and in between those vacations, life is just pure hell. And the only reason you're working 50 weeks out of the year is for that 2-week vacation.
Is
You
to
don't want to
make your escape every now and then.
you don't want to be that guy. So, I've been fairly successful creating a lifestyle, I guess, where I don't feel the need where I have to get away. And I'm just, okay, what's the next vacation? How can I get away and go do something, maybe relaxing, maybe cool, whatever, right? However, whatever people need from their vacation, because people need different things. That some people need to relax, some need to be entertained, some need to be educated. There's all different reasons to go on vacation. But even if you've got a great lifestyle, sometimes you do need to get away from everything every now and then. Not every couple months, but every couple years maybe.
Yeah.
At least for me. Maybe other people have different needs, but it is part of that component of either being a homesteader or a farmer or someone who relies on the earth to give them their either meaning in life or their actual livelihood. Because there's a lot of things out of your control, and it can be stressful and it can be mentally exhausting, and
Yeah.
you need to get away from it every now and then. And how you do that, that's your own business. So that's what I'm planning for next year, a couple weeks in Europe probably, and go back to Italy where I spent part of my youth, and kind of reliving that a little bit, and relaxing. I'm not going to be going,
Oh, just so you kind of know a little bit of Italy. You were there for a little while.
Yeah, right. I'm not the kind of person who wants to, hop on a bus in the morning and drive and go from city to city, and you're carrying your suitcase everywhere you go, and it's rush, and then here, go spend an hour at this museum, and then jump on the bus and then go. I mean, that's just I like I said, I don't like people that much, and I certainly don't want to hang out with people like that. So I'm just gonna find 2 places for a week each, and kind of use that as a home base, and kind of do my own thing in those areas.
Okay.
But that's just me.
Kind of no agenda, just kind of
Right. I mean, there'll be an
experience.
agenda, but it's like somebody else isn't leading me around by the hand and saying, okay, it's time to go here.
Yeah.
It's time to go there. Everybody's waiting on the bus for you. Come on, let's go. Finish your meal.
Yeah.
We got to go. That's not a vacation, man. That's the
Yeah.
life I want to get away from. That's why I'm on a farm. I don't want that in my life. So,
yeah. That tends to happen when you go with a big group of people.
Right. And we're going to go with another couple, but even then you're introducing other people. It's not just you. It's not just what you need. You do have to compromise, and you do have to a little planning, and because the worst thing, and I think everybody's been on a vacation like this when they've gone with the big group, or and it's and it sounds great, and it's probably family members usually that is, and so you get there and say the typical, at least for our part of the country, we're going to go to Florida, to Panama City or Destin for a beach vacation. And you get there, and and everybody gets out of the car, goes in the room and puts their stuff up, and they're like, okay, where are we going to go eat dinner? and then there's this hour or 2 hour long discussion of where to go, and every meal's that way, and it's like, just give me a gun and let me shoot myself. I mean,
well, it does boil down to like there has to be somebody that's like, or there in group dynamic, it seems like it will always boil down to like, how do you do decision making, and a lot of times it's like there's either got to be a consensus or there has to be somebody that steps up and takes charge. So
or it's like, okay, everybody shut up. It's Greg's turn to pick where we go to dinner, and he gets to pick, and y'all just shut up, and that's where we're going.
Yeah.
Tomorrow's your day. So just shut up until tomorrow.
It's kind of been a little bit of a theme talking to the folks that I've been interviewing, at least talking about the community type thing of getting people together. And it's like, how do you do decision making? And the last guys I talked to were Chuck and Chad that are doing a community in Florida. And that's kind of how they're doing it, is like the people that went in together to get the land, they have like a board, I guess, is right. This might not be entirely accurate, but the way they described it to me, they kind of have like the board, and then they come to decisions on a consensus through the people that have the risk involved, that were
the ones with the skin in the game.
Yeah.
Because they should their votes should be weighted accordingly to what the outcome is. It doesn't necessarily need to be a dictatorship, but it's like, we need to give a little more weight to this guy because he's the guy that set it up, and
right.
But that's always tough in group dynamics, especially when you're trying to do that, because people are from different backgrounds, from different cultures, where decision making is different in every different culture. It's amazing,
Yeah. They talked about, building the culture, and they have a set of principles for their community. So I think that's important. You kind of have to have like expectations and, something that everybody's agreeing on, and a common goal, I think. So
yeah, because this is part of my graduate studies that I did when I was in college. One of them was international business and culture and ethics and things like that. And one thing, the lady that was teaching the class, she specialized in Russian culture, Russian business culture, and this was the timing was great for this, because this is about the same time the wall came down over in Eastern Europe. And she spent a lot of time over there and trying to understand.
Was that like the late 80s, something like that?
Yes, late 80s, early 90s. And so she said, their culture is very different, because she did, how do you reward employees? It's mainly in the workplace. How do you reward employees? How do you give raises? What do they respond to? And you in Russia, and it explains why communism got its grassroots started there. I want to do a little history lesson here, but because in pre-Soviet Russia, pre-revolution Russia,
there was the Tsar, right? It was like
it was the Tsar, but and when you talk about the Tsar and the revolution, one of my favorite movies, The Fiddler on the Roof, it's like, the Tsar, what about the Tsar? The Jewish guys are talking about is there a prayer for the Tsar? Yes, there's a prayer for the Tsar. May God keep the Tsar as far away from us as possible. So but that if you look at these small villages, and not even villages, just small, almost tribal communities, they're so isolated from the rest of what they considered I don't even know if they even had an idea that they're Russian. They're just so isolated. So when everything is shared, because that's the only way to exist, right?
Yeah.
Everything, the community owns everything because everybody has to pitch in, and everybody, it's not your shit and my shit, it's our shit, and we got to make this shit work. You know, that's kind of the mentality there, and when people come from a background like that, and
Well, also the communists killed everybody else that opposed them, so there was that too.
True. But I mean, before the communists were even there, that culture was already in these small villages and these isolated pockets of people that they relied on each other. And so when it comes to making decisions, everybody has an equal voice. I mean, yeah, there is some leadership, but it's like we're all in this together, so we all need to agree what direction we're going to take things. Are we going to buy a new plow, for the community, or are we going to not? Or are we going to buy a wagon? We got to spend our money, properly. So you take somebody like that, that's been exposed to a culture like that, and those cultures are embedded for many generations afterwards. It just becomes, that's how culture works. And then you take somebody who maybe is more of an American experience, right? Where, I'm, the rugged individualist. I'm going to take my family in a wagon out west and block off my area and homestead, and I'm going to make it work. Just me. And I make all the decisions, and everybody else is just going to have to live with it. You put those two cultures together in a community, even with common goals, like in a homesteading, supporting community, and you're going to have some clashes there, and you're going to have to figure out how to navigate that, which is just, very, can be the undoing of a good community, is decision making.
Yeah, so we got into a conversation about how a lot of these fail. It's like 90% of them, the modern ones, that people that come together, they attempt this and they end up falling apart in different ways. So,
what works the best initially, and then it eventually falls apart because of human nature, is the benevolent dictator model. Because unfortunately, as the power accumulates into one person, they get a little bit crazy. We can think of Jim Jones or David Koresh or actual cult leaders. It's like people vest them with all ultimate power for the group, and then it goes to their head and they do horrible things. I'm not saying that's going to happen to anybody making a homestead community, but they tend that the power, as with any human, the power tends to go to their head, and they start wielding it in a way that probably isn't beneficial to everybody except themselves. So,
well, man, the Waco thing is a whole nother story, though. I mean, like there was a lot more going on with that than is the like mainstream knowledge. Like I can't remember the documentary I watched. It was like New Evidence in Waco or something like that, but that's it was very much pointed to, like, they sent in some like kind of special ops teams, and there could have been a way better outcome than
absolutely, because at the
having to die there.
I remember it very well because I lived in Texas at the time, and it was like on the news 24/7, and it's like we're at work, like watching it and and it's like the crazy stuff that went on, dudes climbing on the roofs, trying to get in, and they're just like blasting machine guns through the roof, cutting those guys to ribbons, and it's like, what are they doing? We're practically watching this on live TV, and it's like, what are they doing? And then all of a sudden the place catches on fire, and you're like, what's that all about? And it's like, there's a lot. I mean, I haven't read everything about it, but I just remember from a historical perspective of what I was doing at the time. And I was like, this is crazy. It's like,
Yeah.
I was not near the libertarian or agorist or anarchist leanings that I have now, and I'm like, this is crazy. This is crazy, because you had Janet Reno in there who just was just gonna just do what it took to get this off the front page of the news, which is really what they wanted to get. It was just garnering way too much um, headlines. It's like we got to resolve this situation. This has lingered too long. So they went in and did some crazy shit. And it's like, but that's when the state starts wielding power like that. To people who are, for the most part, minding their own business. It's not a good thing.
Waco, a new revelation, I believe, is what it is. So let me see if I can show this real quick. Yeah. So this is the one to go check out. Waco, a new revelation, I believe. That's the only available on YouTube. Let's see if I can find it real quick here.
And that kind of this whole that whole period of time, and especially with Janet Reno, who was was she the attorney general? Was that her job? She was attorney general, I think. She had all the power to wield. But another
Hello,
thing,
I'm Dr. Fred.
Another thing, and not to make this too much about politics, but it's kind of interesting that I don't know if you remember the story of Elian Gonzalez down in Miami.
I do recall some of that.
Where he was a little
kid coming from Cuba.
Yeah, a little kid from Cuba came to Miami, and I guess he was with aunts and uncles or some extended family, and they wanted to send him back. And they went in there, guns drawn, combat, gear on. And I mean, there's a famous picture of the guy like with the gun, and the kid's like, oh my God, and his uncle's like holding him, and it's like, and it was like, oh, and that was during Bill Clinton's, time in office. And it's like, just think of what's going on now.
Well,
we were forcing people at gunpoint who didn't want, that had escaped Cuba to go back, and that was like, okay, and now it's like, you're here illegally, we're sending you back, and like now all of a sudden the world's coming to an end, and it's like, we've always done this. We've always done this. This is nothing new, and it's like, but they make it seem like the world's coming to an end, and Adolf Hitler is now the president of the United States, and they're going to be putting people in concentration camps.
Well, one thing that I've learned from the dives that I've done is that you should not trust government.
No. You should stay as far away from as possible.
When they're telling you one thing, that you should probably do the opposite.
Right. Yeah.
And there is strength in numbers, I think, and people that are isolated are more easily picked off, and that.
That goes two ways as well. Because when the state wants to make a point, it's usually not just some isolated individual who's not bothering anybody. They want to come after an organization, a group, something that's going to have some impact. Something that's going to have some impact, and it's like, we're taking this group of people down because
if there is a group that is garnering support and has like a groundswell happening,
that's when you really draw the bullseye on yourself.
Yeah,
for good or for bad, but yeah, that's can be unfortunate
when you are being effective is when you
Yes.
get the target on your back. Yeah.
Right. Well, with anything, right? Hold on a second.
Yeah. Yeah. That
The
is.
dogs decided to stroll in, but yeah. Well, anytime you threaten the power or the legitimacy, shall we say, of the government, and I think that's really the main thing. They're always going to have the power, but they have to be seen as legitimate, or the
If
entire
you're
country.
actually causing a groundswell that of people to start to see that, I think
Yes.
that's
Yes.
when they want to interrupt what you're doing.
Right. And for whatever reason, whatever issue they bring into the headlines is to distract you from what actually is going on. Obviously, we've known that that's been in the playbook from the beginning, practically.
Yeah, and really, it's really about controlling your mind and controlling your perception so that you're not being effective by choosing not to play the game,
Right.
and that's really what I think the main fear is for the people that are the social engineers and the folks that want to keep the current system the way it is that enough people realize that the way to win the game is to stop playing, and by withdrawing your consent little by little, I think is the way we get there. And if enough people get on board with that, and there's like a way to demonstrate that there's a better way of living, that people will naturally want to go in the different direction.
Right. Right. And that's
the hope. That's the hope.
Sure. And and even if it doesn't come to that, and even if it isn't, going in that direction away from government is always going to be a preferable way to go.
Yeah, because you're growing your skills, you're becoming better at adapting to whatever the times may bring. So,
right.
So
and there shouldn't be anything that the government gets too wound up about. 90% of or 95% of the things we do, they might be not happy about some things. Not that we break the law, but it's like we veer into questioning the legitimacy of government. I mean, they don't appreciate that. as you might imagine, it's like, oh wow, you're not legitimate. You're just there for the power games. But
yeah.
But again, just like when we're talking about making decisions, because really that's all government is, right? It's people making decisions for other people
on behalf. It's supposed to be,
Well, right. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, sure.
I mean, it's kind of been since the Federal Reserve Act. I mean, the banks are ultimately the deciders, being able to manipulate and control the society through the printing of money. Who do we owe all that money to?
Right.
The Federal Reserve banking system, the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, all those guys.
But it's it's certainly something that everybody needs to think about.
Become aware of. Yeah.
Become aware of, because it's I don't know what issue it was that I was talking to somebody the other day about. I go, that was kind of a turning point for me of like, this isn't what I thought it was. You grow up and you're like, okay, like on the news, it's like, oh well, they're telling the truth most of the time, and then all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, that's not what happened. I mean, I know it started when I was in college, and I took a marketing class, and it was kind of funny. I wrote a paper on journalistic ethics. This is back in the 90s, right? And it's just like how you were lied to by the media. I mean, it's it was a rather unique point of view back then, at least in my mind. It's like, wow, I was looking at different things in my life, and they were even caught on it. I think it was what was it? I think it was like a 60-minute show or one of those 2020 or 60 minutes, those investigative journalist, TV shows where they're gonna, and they actually did show where I forget who it was, when they had the gas tanks exploding, I think on Ford trucks or something like that. And they went in and investigated, and they're like doing all this research, and they made this commercial or this documentary of, oh, these cars are dangerous. And it's like, and they actually went in, and it's like they kept crashing these vehicles, and they didn't explode. So they actually put an igniter underneath the car so they would explode. And it's like they literally uncovered that. And I'm like, how did they get away with that? That just didn't seem to me to be right. And obviously it's not. But I mean, this is back in the 80s, 90s, and I was like, wow, that's ridiculous. And then there's just a bunch of other things that was happening at the time as I started digging in. It's like, and even just news, if you've ever been involved in a story that's been covered by the news, I mean, relatively directly, like it's about your business or your job or maybe a family member, and you know the facts because you're there, you've been there, you know what's going on, and then you see how the media actually reports on it, and you're like, that's nothing like what's going on. How do you get away with putting this on TV? It's like, it's really shocking when it's something that not what your friend said happened, or I saw a guy talking about this and he's got evidence. No, it's something you physically have seen and done and been there, and they absolutely screw it up. And you're like, wow. And that's when whether you take a red pill, green pill, black pill, white pill, you're taking some kind of pill at that point, because it's bad. And it just continues on over and over. And then you get to a point that I get to, it's like, well, you can't really trust any news source, very few news sources. I mean, and if you do, you gotta vet them. You gotta go where, I learned this years ago, is like, and that, what's the source material for the story? And it's like, and then you dig into that, and then you dig, well, they actually took that story from somebody else who took it from somebody else. And then you get to the actual initial reporting of what happened. It's like, that's not what the headline says at all. That's not what happened. It's like, how did they get to the point where they're just openly lying? And it's like, whether it's the media or the government, it's the same thing, actually. It's
at this point, the media is a mouthpiece for the government.
How do you get away with that? And that is so unfortunate. That's so unfortunate, because in the founding of our country, the press had specific protections because they had such an important role to play to tell the truth. And it's like, that doesn't matter anymore.
It's one of the safeguards against tyranny is to have a free and open press. Yeah,
it should be, but we just throw that. We just throw that
using power.
Yeah, it's terrible. So anyway,
well, one of those things I can bring this up. Learned a little bit about this is the Smith-Mundt Act. It was originally passed to keep the government from being able to propagandize the American people. So that might be part of the reason why some of these stories were coming out on some of the bigger stations during your
Right.
time. It would have been before I was born, but there were some interesting reports, like you said, like on 60 Minutes and things like that where they were telling you some good information, actually.
Yeah.
And in 2012, I think it was Obama, they did the Smith-Mundt Modernization Act, which basically was revised it so that now that they would be able to legally propagandize the American people. So,
Wow.
so yeah, that was passed by Obama. But that thing that you were talking about, 60 Minutes being able to show some good stuff. John Loftus was a guy that was like digging into the crimes of the German government, the Nazis, and ran across how one of the Rockefellers was getting bribed by a certain state in the Middle East, and that was aired on a 60 Minutes program, and Candace Owens actually talked about this recently. John Loftus wrote this book called The Witness Tree, and he had to get it through the censors of the publication networks by calling it a fictional story, making it a novel. But there was a novel called The Witness Tree. One of the authors was John Loftus, and there was a 60 Minutes episode where they go into all the details about that, of what his findings were, and you can go look that up. But yeah, there was some actual good information getting out at a certain point in time.
Yeah, but very rarely.
Try to go find that book now.
Yeah, well,
after Candace Owens talked about that book, it's super rare to find it in hardcover. I don't know if you can find it, or if it is, it's like super expensive.
Sure.
Yeah, but, I looked it up recently and I couldn't get it. I couldn't find it anywhere.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that we're at the point we're at, and what's even more alarming is social media and attention spans. Is people just rarely go past the headline because they're on to the next thing, and then and the way that human brain works is like you're just reading all these headlines and they're in your brain, and then there's nothing behind it. You don't know it. You don't know the facts of the situation. You only know the headlines, but it's embedded in your brain and it becomes the truth. And that's just horribly sad, because you've got to have. I mean, you see this with social media. Or social media interviews of asking people at these rallies about, hey, so what do you believe, or what is this about? And they're just clueless. They're just there because they saw a headline, or they were paid to be there.
Here you go, John. You can buy it now in the hardcover version for $265. So it is available now.
I think I'll pass on that for a while. Wait for the movie to come out. I don't know.
So yeah, if you had known about the book and had bought,
and paperback, it's $1,048.21. So
Yeah, so a lot of people went out and bought this book after Candace Owens was talking about it. And
I bet. You just need to go to garage sales and find this thing and just start making some serious money.
Yeah.
I sold books on Amazon for a while, so it actually works. But that's a pretty high price point, man. Whew.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, we live in a society that is all about being able to control your perceptions, and so if you can break out of that and realize that you're constantly being told lies, that, like I said, the only way to win the game is to stop playing. So that's what hopefully a lot of this is getting people to realize, is that really the responsibility is ours if we want a better world, and we have to start making changes to take responsibility back for that, for creating
Well,
better future.
and I think we have to be really, I think, much more accurate when we talk about companies selling things and marketing and product placement and stuff like that. It's not marketing, it's propaganda, because very little of it is actually true. They're just trying to manipulate your emotions so you'll smash the buy button, on your phone. That's all they're doing. They're manipulating. It's not about truth. It's not about providing you with a product that's going to work for you or that you actually need. It's just manipulating you into, just be on social media for a little while that has ads, and you just keep getting this avalanche of the same ad over and over again. And they're just trying to break you down till you go, Jesus, I need that, and hit the buy button. It's serious. It's serious. At least when you just had television and, the three major networks, and you had commercials, at least you only got exposed to a handful every day. Well, depends how much TV you watched.
Yeah, that was in that John Taylor Gatto book, Dumbing Us Down. It was like
you're just getting beat over the head by propaganda. It's not marketing. I don't even like the name marketing anymore. It's propaganda. It's how do we manipulate the customer into buying our product? That's all it is. And you can say, oh well, you're creating a solution. Your product is a solution for their problems, and blah 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 blah. But when it comes down to it, man, the pictures, the sound, the music, everything is programmed to get you to buy that. And it's like, and I feel myself being moved in that direction when I'm exposed to so much of it. It's like, and then I got to go, wait a second, they're just this is not right. I didn't want this product a week ago, and now I'm like thinking that I need one. And it's like, this is crazy. And just think, and I'm not saying I'm this, really smart person, but I have been around a while. What does it do to a young mind that doesn't have the built-in defenses and the experience in life to say, don't, that's all bullshit, man. Why are you spending your money on that? And then you see that the things people spend their money on. It's like, you can barely put food on the table, but you're buying the shit over here. What is that about? Like, their brains been just turned into mud. And young minds are just much more susceptible, obviously, than old people like me who don't change very often. But when you're young, man, you're just manipulated from such a young age. And we could go into the education system too, but that's a whole nother program. that's many programs, but it's like, it's so
well. I think that you're right. I mean, the solution, I think, is to really understand that, right, and to understand that you are susceptible. We all are, to these things, and that you need to be aware of that, and then you need to, especially if you have children, to attempt to keep them away from the stuff that would be harmful to them.
Right. Because from on a positive side of this argument or situation, that it can be flipped. We just have to figure out how, because somebody told me a long time ago that encouraged me to do some writing, and I'm like, I'm not very good at writing. It's like, it really doesn't matter, because if you're writing and only one person reads that, you've started to change the world one person at a time, because everything you read affects you and changes you in one way. It doesn't matter what it is. I mean, it's data that you're bringing into your system, and it's like, but I think there's a way to positively affect this, and maybe putting out positive content, or content that helps protect people from this, however it may be, because and just as long as you don't have an affiliate link or some scammy way to make money out of trying to help people, and honestly just help people, and it's like, that's just what, and if you make money at it, I mean, nobody's going to fault you for that, but it has to be very apparent that the person, you're just trying to get information out to people to help them, not to monetize it in any large scale way, because that's when people are becoming much more sensitive to that. It's like, okay, this all sounds really good, so how are you making money at this deal? Oh, you got affiliate links, and you got links in your bio, and and you're pushing traffic to this place and that place, and that's how you make. And that's fine. That's the world of social media. I mean, that's the world the way it is, and not the way I want it to be. So it doesn't really matter. But you can use those same tools to hopefully help other folks and try to get them, down the road and away from the bad shit.
This is a book, Rebel Without a Crew. Robert Rodriguez. He talks about, like, he just got started making films, and I think, like, his first film he made, we had like a $7,000 budget or something like that, and I think he was on Joe Rogan. He talked about the creative process, and like you were saying about writing, he described, how he does it, and he lays out like note cards, and he just starts to write, and then, he might have like 2 or 3 scenes that he puts down on the note cards, and then the rest of the story can get filled in from there. And it was a really interesting interview. And this book is, kind of describing a little
his
bit
process, kind of how he does that.
About, well, the story of how he just, everybody says you got to go to film school and you got to learn all this stuff.
Right.
Well, if you actually just start doing it, you'll start learning a bunch of stuff along the way. And
right.
And that's a lot of kind of what he talked about, was like the creativity a lot of times can come from when you have very little as far as resources, and you have like the desire to do something that, if you just stick with it and you use what resources you have available, you can get really creative. And I think even to this day, he has like his own like film production. He does a lot of this stuff in his own like kind of studio thing.
Right. That's cool.
And then, like if you're independent and you want to produce something independently where you don't have like this whole team of people that you're going to have to go to them, like, oh, well, you can't do that, or you can't do this, and kind of,
you got to cut that scene out because we don't like that scene.
It kind of waters down the thing that you're trying to create. So it's like really good to like forge your way independently in some way and figuring out how you can make that work so that somebody's not holding something over you. But
right.
It's a big challenge.
Another good example of that you're familiar with and I'm familiar with is the Roots So Deep movie and Carbon
Right.
Cowboys, which is what started that out. And Peter Bick, the filmmaker, is like, he has to go out and raise money for those films, but he does it in a way where he has enough creativity and independence that he can go out and say what he wants to say and have a positive impact, because he's just doing this because, number one, he's passionate about the subject, right? And that's obviously important. That's what gives you the discipline to stay on course. But yeah, I mean, it almost makes me want to start making films. It's like, because you can have an impact on other people. Yeah, there we are.
Yeah, I like where you're going there. It really, I've come to that realization myself, and I think a big part of the programming is to get people to want to give up on whatever thing that they're pursuing because you're not gaining traction or whatever.
Right.
And that, it's just like, okay, well, just give up then. And really, that's when you lose. And the big thing is, like you're saying, it's kind of a ripple effect. Like, you never know what you said might influence somebody else and kind of inspire them to start thinking alternatively about something and wanting to move in a more positive direction themselves. I can name a multitude of people that have inspired me to keep going, and they're also in the same boat where they're like, I've been saying this for years, and I'm not gaining more traction, and I get suppressed by a lot of stuff, but I continue to do it, man, because this is important.
Yeah, because it just because you don't have a 1 million person audience, you're affecting people,
Well, there are guys that are getting information out that are getting on big platforms. I would say Kurt Metzger, the comedian, is one of those guys that has been on some big platforms and has laid down some stuff that he's learned from these guys that are pretty suppressed. So
right.
And so the information's getting out there, and those people that are working in the trenches are getting the information out there.
Yeah. That's excellent. That's excellent because
that is reaching more people.
Yeah, because it's people aren't going to cheer you on most of the time. You'll have some supporters, but you just have to keep plugging away. And if you don't become this, it should be to get information out, right?
I think we have to get more effective at it too. It's like we have to keep getting better at the craft. So if you decide to give up, then you're not going to continue to improve.
Right.
And when you keep improving and making it look better and more entertaining and ways that you can reach more people, then you're going to be more effective. So you just got to keep going and keep refining, I think.
Right. And I think it's important because, it's the ideas that you want to get out there. It's not necessarily you, right? Because I think that's why people quit, because they go, I've failed. It's like, well, you haven't failed. You just quit. Like you said, that's one of the few good things. Well, I shouldn't say that. That seems negative. That's one of the things I'll always remember my father telling me. It's like, it said, you're only a loser when you quit.
Yeah.
You only lose when you quit. It's the only way you can lose is quit.
Yeah.
And so just keep at it. And, and as long as you don't quit, you're not a loser. You're in the game. If you're in the game, you're not a loser, And I
that's a good lesson for life. Yeah.
And it's real simple, it's a real simple thing, but, and even, one of the famous Teddy Roosevelt quotes when he's taken the media to task. It's like, it's really easy to criticize if you haven't been in the fight and had to fight. It's easy when you're not involved in the day-to-day, drudgery of doing the things that need to be done, and be critical of people that do that when you've never gotten your hands dirty, So, and it's like, so somebody, and oh, well, you have a shitty podcast. It's like, well, where's yours at?
Yeah. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly
right. And it's like, it's easy.
There will be a lot of people out there that will say, wow, this sucks. And it's like, well, what have you done?
And social media is full of people like that. We normally call those people trolls, because they have nothing to offer but just criticism. And sometimes it's humorous, but it's like, dude, man, who are you?
But you can gain insight from some of their stuff,
No, true. You have to,
Some of it is some legitimate insight,
but you can't take it personally. That's
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
the
you're
part.
right about
It's
that.
like,
Yeah.
it's not about you. It may be about your process. It may be about your ideas. It may be about where you present the ideas. It's not about you, because once you start thinking it's all about you and they're being critical of you, and they may be critical of you, but you just can't. You got to push that aside, because that'll wear you down.
You've got to push through it. Yeah.
Yeah, because that'll beat you down. Because once you start internalizing things, it can be rough on you, and so that's the same thing with farming or raising a crop, that failed.
Getting yourself into better shape. You know?
Right. It's like
Yeah.
it's like I'm doing it and you're criticizing me for doing it. What have you done? It's like, oh, those are some shitty tomatoes you grew there. I know, okay, but I'm gonna try to do better next year. And I learned from the mistakes I made this year. And it just, if you can't take just a little bit of criticism or hard truths sometimes, then you gotta suck it up a little bit sometimes. And that's life in general. But especially
Right.
if you're trying to build a product or get a message out, the same thing's going to happen.
Yeah, yeah. It's really develop, like, for anybody that might be younger out there listening, that you're gonna be put through trials, and whatever your plan is, what did Mike Tyson say, is like, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. You're really not gonna know how it's really gonna go down until you test out some of your ideas.
Yeah.
And that a good thing is to just get started with something that you're wanting to pursue, and figure it out as you go. And you're going to learn a lot more by putting those things into action,
Right.
than by sitting around just thinking about it. Like,
well, because really that actually gets down to basically the scientific method, right? You come up with
yeah,
a
right.
hypothesis of what you think it may be. This is a truth. This is a something. My tomatoes, I'm going to do this year. My hypothesis is that I'm going to improve the organic matter in the soil and have better tomatoes, and it's like, then you test it out. You go, okay, we've done that for 2 or 3 years. Have you checked the organic level, matter level in your soil? Well, it hasn't changed. So I guess really what you're trying to do really wasn't working. But you can take that information and move on and go, okay, well, we've established that didn't work. Let's go and find something that does, and not go, oh, wow, I suck because my first experiment failed. It's like, I'm a bad scientist, or I'm a bad thinker, or I'm a bad gardener or podcaster, or whatever it might be, because life just isn't that black and white. You've got to knuckle up and decide that this is something you want to do, and do it, and you'll get better. It's like, I've got a guitar right here. I've been self-taught for 20 years and I still suck at it, but I still try to play every day, and I try to learn something every day, and not a whole lot of people could sit here and listen to me play for very long, but that's okay. I'm still trying,
Yeah.
And that's because you don't want to be a quitter. You don't want to be a quitter, because life gets pretty dark when you quit on it, man.
Yeah, I have noticed that in myself, is
once you quit on yourself, man, it's a tough road to get out of.
Action alleviates those feelings
Yes.
of those negative feelings, and,
Mm-hmm.
and so when you're in the process of taking action that's going to bring you closer to your goals, at least you have that satisfaction that, yeah, I'm doing something to get closer to where I want to be. So it helps kind of get those out of your system.
Well, and that actually comes back to a very old spiritual practice, is that, when you wake up in the morning, you're like, okay, this is my plan for today, whatever it might be. It might be, I'm not gonna yell at my wife, even though she's a bitch. It's like, I don't need to yell at her so much. And This is probably not a good example, but at the end of the day, you go, well, how did I do? What action did I take? Or, well, actually, you plan that action during the day, and then you go ahead and do it. At the end of the day, you go, okay, how did I do? Well, I did pretty good, but I could have done better at this. And you kind of like, it's a beginning and end of the day that has some discipline built into it, and that you can plan your day and review your actions at the end of the day, and it's a very common practice. It used to be, like I said, it's more of a spiritual practice, but in a practical way too. It's like, you get up in the morning, okay, what am I going to do today? Well, I have to weed the garden, I have to move the cows. Oh yeah, I got this project I'm going to do. And at the end of the day, when you're having a cold drink, you're like, okay, well, I got most of the stuff done. Or you don't want to be the guy I know I just laid on the couch and played video games all day, and I didn't accomplish anything.
Yeah.
Because that's when you turn into, life gets dark when you
you start slipping into the darkness.
Yeah. It's like, so that discipline of at least setting a goal on the day and reviewing it at the end of the day, at least what you've done during the day, and has it moved you closer to your goal.
And I think it is good to take that action to write it down too, because then it's, instead of being locked up here in the ethereal, that it becomes something physical, and then you're able to like translate that into action.
That would actually be a great app for a phone. And it's like, okay, it's 8:00 in the morning.
Write your goals.
Give me 3 things you're going to do, and at 8:00 at night, it pops up on your screen. Well, did you do these, asshole, or didn't you? How'd you do? Which one are you going to have to move on tomorrow's list because you didn't get it done today? And
that's not something I struggle with too. Like I need to do that. I need to do that a lot more.
It's just discipline, and this is a common meme. I don't like to even use the meme. It's actually a phrase that is very true. It's like, motivation isn't gonna help you accomplish your goals, because motivation is a very emotional. It floats on your emotions. Your motivation comes and rises and falls with your emotions. Discipline is, okay, I'm laying out a solid plan where I have to accomplish and do things every day and do them. That's discipline. Motivation is like, I'm going to go to the gym today and I'm going to really, really have a good workout, Well, that's if you're feeling good in the morning when you wake up. Feel like shit, or you're lazy, or you're tired.
Yeah, don't give yourself an out. That's what I've found with doing the workouts and everything. It's like, it's a non-negotiable. I just have to do it. It's like not negotiable for me.
Right. You've established. You've done really well at that, and I'm real proud of you're sticking to it and doing that. But that's exactly the plan right there. These are some certain non-negotiables, and I got to do these, and because you probably have noticed in yourself a little bit more, probably some self-esteem rising a little bit from doing that, and it's like, shit, look what I did. Because that's all self-esteem is. It's like, you're not worthy of doing anything, so you just never fucking do it.
No, I've realized that. Yeah, you always have this like nagging feeling that you have those negative things that are entering your mind, like you failed yourself because you've lacked to take action.
Right.
So really, if by doing and accomplishing that one thing that is totally in your control and is free is focusing on your fitness somehow. And if that's out of order, then I think a lot of other stuff gets out of order. So
And
so that's a big thing that was thrown down on me was like, why don't you work on that first? And then a lot of things may follow from that. And I have seen how that has affected me personally in pushing towards more of my other goals. So
Yeah, because you've shown that you can do it. You've shown yourself that you can do it.
Yeah.
And that's all it is. It's like showing up every Sunday night to do this podcast. That's another, unless you're out of town or something like that, it's kind of a non-negotiable. It's what we do on Sunday night now.
Yeah.
Sometimes we change the people here, and you might not be here, but it continues on, and it's just and it depends on maybe some holidays we don't do it, but it's good for me, right? Because
Yeah.
it's one of those things that
Me too.
every week I know that this is going to happen, and I need to, if we have a topic, I can prepare in my brain what that might be. Tonight was kind of a free for all, and we kind of went down a couple different directions, which was fun. But hey, it's that's all you got to do in life is just keep at it and take action, and things will happen.
Yeah, just keep pushing forward, keep refining, and just don't quit. Yeah. So
obviously.
Yep. That's a good thing to leave on.
Yes.
So John, where can people find you and follow you? And
yes, you can find me on X at Soul Survivor 78. That's my name on there is Grass Farmer John.
All right. And you guys, if you like this content and you want to leave a comment, it would be awesome to see what you guys have to say about what we're talking about. And subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for interviews that I have coming up. I have Scott Armstrong who will be coming on, and that interview will be released on Friday. Scott Armstrong has a YouTube channel, Rebunked News, and he's also one of the co-hosts of the Grand Theft World podcast. So I'm really excited to get to talk to him and have him on my main podcast, the Tinker Tribe podcast, and then come and hang out with us Sunday nights for Homestead from Scratch with John and Logan. And appreciate you guys for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Later.
All right.